She was supposed to die that day, stabbed, broken, erased like her brother and mother. But she didn't. A Tok'ra agent found her, saved her, and now everything is about to change. Welcome to TH Stories 80. Let's dive into Chapter 1 of the Third Dragon. Planet designated P2X63R. It had been nearly 3 years since the end of the Ori threat to the Milky Way. Now it was time to rebuild, to restore lives and homes on planets left decimated by the Ori's ruthless crusade. Of course, other threats still lingered in the galaxy. Chief among them was the Lucien Alliance, which had slithered into the power vacuum left by the downfall of the Goa'uld. Though previously pushed back by the Ori, the Alliance had grown emboldened once that greater threat was extinguished. They even had the audacity to launch a direct attack on Earth, the home of Stargate Command and Homeworld Command, organizations that had long obstructed the Alliance's criminal enterprises. While the bomb that tore into the Pentagon was disarmed just minutes before detonation, the message was clear. The Lucien Alliance wanted war. And now they had one. The Tauri, allied with the recently rediscovered remnants of the Tolan and the Free Jaffa Nation, responded swiftly, taking the fight directly to the Alliance. Meanwhile, the Tok'ra mobilized covert teams tasked with hunting down the scattered remnants of the Goa'uld underlords who had slipped into the galaxy's shadows. One such Goa'uld named Surasi, once an underlord serving the former System Lord Baal, was discovered by a Tok'ra spy while investigating the abduction of civilians from several worlds. On one such planet, Surasi's Jaffa were neutralized and the enslaved population freed. He narrowly escaped capture, slipping through a Stargate mere minutes before the Tok'ra could apprehend him. By the time they reached the dial-home device, the gate had already deactivated. The glyphs identifying his destination were lost. Unbeknownst to the Tok'ra, the Stargate on P2X63R was located within a large, unstable cavern. The activation of the gate triggered a tremor, initiating a cave-in. Surasi, nearly struck unconscious by falling debris, ran for his life as the cavern collapsed behind him. He barely made it out alive, stumbling into the outskirts of a massive city, its skyline choked with rising smoke. Back on the original planet, it took the Tok'ra several hours to pry open the DHD's base and inspect the internal circuitry. Eventually, they recovered the last dial address. They attempted to dial it, but the wormhole would not form. Later that day, a Tok'ra operative named Talia emerged from hyperspace in a teltac over the intended destination. At first, the teltac's sensors showed nothing. No human life signs, no Goa'uld. It was a ghost world. Odd, considering her ship's sensors were advanced enough to detect even a single life form from orbit. But the moment she entered the atmosphere, everything changed. Life signs. Millions of them. Talia frowned. How was this possible? She had so many questions, but only one mission. Find Surasi. She redirected the ship's sensors to scan for Goa'uld signatures. There you are, she murmured with satisfaction as her scans locked onto a target. A large, majestic red building at the edge of a sprawling, chaotic city. A smile crept across her face as she grabbed the handheld life sign detector beside her. Steering the ship toward the far end of the city, she found a landing spot and touched down. Before leaving the ship, Talia pressed the Sodan cloaking band on her left wrist and vanished from view. Magor's Holdfast, King's Landing. An hour later, using the Tok'ra-designed life sign detector, the uncloaked Talia finally found the man she was searching for. The Goa'uld had taken over the body of a young man in his mid-30s, and he was pressed against the wall, Talia's arm at his throat. She stared into his brown eyes, which glowed for a second. They were on the topmost floor of what was supposed to be the most secure building in King's Landing. As Talia glared into the eyes of the Goa'uld before her, she could feel her symbiote, Arisa, telling her mentally that their target had been caught and that it was time to end him. The hallways on this floor were empty due to the evacuation. In the emptiness, the walls echoed with Surasi's grunt as Talia punched him in the side. Sholva! Surasi screamed, bringing up his arms in an attempt to strangle Talia. All he managed to do was grab her arms. Die, she whispered before the man could step forward. Her left arm still pressed against his throat. Talia closed her right hand into a fist, her fingers pressing down on the pressure sensor in her palm. A millisecond later, she stepped back and released him. Surasi leapt at her with rage in his eyes. A razor-sharp blade, an alloy of carbon, naquadah, and trinium, unsheathed from a compartment along the right arm of her black skin-tight suit. Talia swung her arm horizontally, the blade cutting through the air, then through one side of Surasi's skin, bone, and the Goa'uld symbiote, and out the other side. The head rolled to the floor before the body crumbled. Blood poured from the severed neck. Talia closed her eyes in regret for killing the young host, but with the city in chaos, she just wanted to finish the job. And now her job was done. Her mission complete. She retracted the blade back into its compartment and pressed the button on her left wrist. It glowed red for a few seconds before blinking. Her cloaked Teltac, parked at a dilapidated arena at the edge of the city, activated its autopilot and began flying toward the tracer on Talia's uniform. She just had to reach the nearest window, board the transport, and then fly out of the city and off the planet. As Talia was about to cloak her body, she heard the distant screams of people, men, women, and children echoing from the city below. In Westerosi history, this would be known as the fall of King's Landing, the end of Robert's rebellion. The Lannisters had invaded the city and were sacking it at that very moment. Talia didn't know the politics behind what was happening, and she didn't really care. Her target was the Goa'uld, and it had been neutralized. However, just as she was about to activate the Sodan cloaking device and run to the nearest window, Talia heard a blood-curdling scream from 4 doors down the hallway. She shook her head and stared at the wooden door along the curved hallway. Hesitating for a few seconds, she turned toward the stairway that would take her to the next floor, where she could meet her Teltac. Talia told herself this wasn't her problem. She needed to return to Vorash and submit her report to the council. Her symbiote, Arisa, agreed. Talia took a step closer to the stairway, but she stopped, her blood freezing, when she heard another blood-curdling scream from behind the same door. Talia looked over her shoulder and closed her eyes, her hands rolling into fists. This wasn't her fight. Then she heard another scream, this time sounding like it came from a young girl. Then came the wail of a baby. "Stay away from them," screamed the woman, her voice full of terror. "Please, stay away. Mercy, I beg mercy. No, no. Mother!" The young female voice cried out. Her voice reverberated through the walls as Talia turned around, hesitating. This wasn't her fight. She had completed her job, just like so many other missions on other worlds. And then this girl screamed again, help me, mother, father, help." Then the voice was gone. Please, no, the woman screamed, her voice filled with anguish. A chill ran up Talia's spine. She told herself she had to act. This wasn't her mission, but she still had to act. Something pushed her to move. Then she heard the woman scream a name with a wail. "Rhaenys!" The baby's cries continued. "Talia," Arisa mentally scolded as her host took a step forward, her eyes now set on the wooden door. "This is not our concern. We must..." Suddenly, the wail of the baby was cut off, and the woman behind the fourth door screamed louder. It was the scream of anguish. What have I done? Talia thought as she ran full speed toward the door, her hesitation pushed aside. She had to act. It was the human part of her that needed to. Talia. Arisa scolded again as Talia rushed toward the door. We have seen numerous people killed on the way here. The enemy army has been sacking this city since we arrived. Are you going to save all of them? Why didn't you save the others you saw being killed? Or the ones being raped? Why? Before the symbiote could finish, Talia mentally responded. I had a mission to complete. That mission is over. I should have acted earlier. Talia. Arisa began again, as Talia dashed from the beheaded body to the door, now echoing with screams and thuds. The symbiote could feel Talia's emotions and her thoughts. It too felt the need to act. As Talia lifted her leg to kick down the door using her enhanced strength, Arisa considered taking control. Talia had her orders. Return home after the mission. No detours. Arisa could feel Talia becoming too emotionally involved. The door slammed open, its lock falling into a pool of blood. Talia's eyes went wide. A mixture of disgust, disbelief, and anger flooded her being. She first saw a little girl, around 3 or 4 years old, with multiple stab wounds to her abdomen, chest, and shoulders. A dagger was stuck into the side of her head. She lay on a blood-soaked bed. Her blood. Talia's eyes then shifted to a mass of pink tissue lying on the floor in a pool of red blood and organs. Her gaze moved to a large man in blood-spattered armor. His chest plate bore a crest with 3 animals in a vertical column. Talia couldn't identify the animals, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the wall beside him, splattered with blood, flesh, and brain matter. Then came a sickening crack and a woman's scream. The armored man reached down to the bloody, bruised woman bent over a table. The woman screamed in pain as he lifted her above his head with blood-stained steel gloves. Talia remained frozen in shock as she watched him pull her in half, the 2 halves of her body falling in bloody heaps. Talia's perception of time slowed. She felt her own rage and that of Arisa's. The armored man reached for the largest sword she had ever seen. She doubted her blade could withstand a strike from such a weapon. A chill ran through her as he stepped forward. At the same time, through her enhanced hearing, she caught the sound of approaching voices and footsteps in the hallway behind her. She only had minutes before reinforcements arrived. The beeping on her tracker told her the cloaked ship waited for her outside the window below. I told you, we could not do anything, Arisa said in her mind. We must activate our cloak and leave this place. Talia stepped back, staring at the towering man whose crazed eyes peered through his helmet. She was just about to jump back into the hallway and vanish when she noticed something. The little girl moved. She's still alive? Talia thought, watching the child's small fingers twitch. Her blood soaked the sheets. Just barely. Just barely. Her eyes shifted back to the man gripping his sword's handle. Before Arisa could speak, Talia reached for a Zadnikatel, just as the giant screamed in rage and rushed at her. Talia dove aside, avoiding the swing of the sword, and fired the Zat. She was surprised, even impressed, as she thought, he's fast for his size. The blue beam hit him, lightning crackling across his body. He dropped to one knee, the sword clattering to the blood-stained floor. Talia jumped to her feet just as he lunged again from one knee. Ah! He growled in madness. How is he still moving? Talia thought as she dove away, rolled on the floor near the top half of the dead woman's body, and fired again. The giant howled in rage as another zap blast struck him. She fired again. After the fourth shot, the mountain fell with a thud. He lay still, but breathing. "Talia, we need to leave. Now!" the symbiote shouted in her mind. And that's what Talia did. 2 minutes later, Lannister soldiers stormed the hallways and entered the royal nursery. To their shock, and Tywin Lannister's, they found the body of the mountain lying face down. His great sword lay beside him. Tywin's jaw clenched. He glared at the ruined room. He looked down at Elia Martell's torn body and the small corpse of Aegon Targaryen. A smile threatened his face until he saw the bed. It was soaked in blood, but the girl's body was missing. A child with this much blood loss should be dead, Tywin said darkly. "Find Rhaenys Targaryen's body. Search under the bed, the closets, the holdfast. Search everything before Robert arrives." When no body was found, Tywin ordered the abduction of another girl, one about Rhaenys' age. They found her, a maid's daughter. The maid was killed first, then her daughter, after watching her mother die, was handed over to Sir Amory Lorch. He beat her face until it was unrecognizable before stabbing her over 50 times. When Robert Baratheon arrived, he was presented with 3 bodies, Elia, Aegon, and a child claimed to be Rhaenys. When Eddard Stark saw them, his rage was palpable. "They are no babes," Robert said coldly. "They were dragon spawn." In disbelief, disgust, and rage, Ned turned his back on his old friend to find his sister. A month later, Eddard found Lyanna dying on a blood-soaked bed in a tower in Dorne. She placed her son, Aemon Targaryen, in his arms and begged him to protect the boy. Through tears, he swore he would. Lyanna died. To protect the child, Ned Stark lied to everyone, his best friend and king, to Westeros, even to his wife. He claimed the boy was his own bastard, Jon Snow. But his is another story, a story of ice and fire. Back in the present, Talia flew the cloaked ship out of the atmosphere. In the rear compartment, Rhaenys Targaryen lay barely breathing. Once in space, Talia activated the hyperdrive, setting a course not for Earth, which would take too long, but for the nearest Stargate 10 light-years away. As the ship reached hyperspace, Talia locked the controls and rushed to the girl. She opened a Goa'uld marked box and retrieved the healing device. Slipping it onto her hand, she allowed Arisa to take control. Arisa knelt beside the dying child and hovered the device over her head. The red crystal glowed, illuminating the wound. Slowly the injuries began to close. Arisa swept the beam over the rest of her body, surprised by the child's resilience. "You wish to fight, child," Arisa thought, looking at her face. "Taking you to Earth directly, or to the Tok'ra homeworld, would take too long. Your wounds are healing, but your blood loss is severe. The life of a Tok'ra is no life for a child, not even one who survived such a nightmare. The healing device can only do so much. Your major injuries will be healed, but the rest must be treated by the Tauri. They will bring you back to life. They will watch over you." Alpha Site, 1340 hours. "Defense teams to the gate room, defense teams to the gate room," yelled the lieutenant, who was on duty at the table to the left of the Stargate. There was a small laptop on his table, and behind him were banks of computers and screens. The laptop acted as the DHD for the Alpha Site Stargate, and after it was activated, it became the receiver for any SG Team IDC. While the event horizon rippled, the lieutenant stared at the computer screen, waiting for a security code signal from Stargate Command. "But they're not supposed to check in for 3 more days," he thought to himself as the defense teams rushed in, with Colonel Pierce, the base commander, following them. Access to the Alpha Site Stargate was extremely restricted. Only the SGC knew the address, along with a handful of Jaffa and the Tok'ra. As the defense team trained their weapons on the active wormhole's event horizon, they waited with bated breath for someone to step through. The Alpha Site gate was unshielded and had no iris. Because of that, it was designated for use only in absolute emergencies. That's why there were about 20 heavily armed Marines with state-of-the-art weaponry aimed at the event horizon. And with the SGC's luck, anything could happen. Absolutely anything. So imagine their surprise when a woman rushed through the Stargate with a bloody little girl in her arms. "I am a Tok'ra operative, and this girl requires medical attention." "Medic!" yelled the colonel after seeing the bloody girl. "Call a medic!" To be continued.